Hey everyone, welcome back. Last week on our last episode, Kibby said that she had a health condition that was going to really influence the new year, and we wanted to address it and talk about it because it's something that I'm sure someone you know has gone through. But I don't think it's my place to say what's going on. So Kibby, I'm going to pass the mic to you. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on in your life recently?
Yeah, I have breast cancer.
Yeah.
It was a total shock. I have no family history. I'm 38. I'm healthy. But on November 17th, only 2 months ago, found a lump. And I went to check it out. And December 4th, I got the diagnosis that I have cancer. So my whole life changed after that.
How do you feel talking about it here for the first time?
Yeah, nervous because, to be honest, I think a lot of people in my life might actually find out right now while listening.
Yeah.
And it's going to be public, right? This is something I won't have control over in terms of how people see me, what people know about me. But then again, I thought, it's such a mission of mine to be open about our struggles and how people can help in these situations and being honest about them. And also, people are going to be able to see. I'm going to look different in the next couple months. And this is one of the few times in my life where I can't hide what's going on with me,
This episode has so many layers. It's talking about what you've been going through simultaneously letting people know. This whole podcast is supposed to be about how to support loved ones with cancer. And we've noticed there have been so many episodes that have been about us, the things that have been going on in our lives and how we support each other. And it's like, wow, that's exactly what, is happening here again today. It's someone with cancer and someone in the position of supporting. And so we'll talk about, both sides basically, because we want to know about, Kibby, your experience and perspective, and then also some of what the research says about what it's like for friends and loved ones, and then we both have. I have the perspective of my boyfriend whose wife died from cancer, so I'll talk a little bit about his perspective, a little bit about my own perspective, but it's very embryonic, and then you have the perspective of a friend who had breast cancer as well. So we have a lot to talk about. How do you feel about talking about it generally? Is this something you're sick of? Is this something that makes you feel terrible? Is this something that it's good to get off your shoulders? What's that like?
Yeah, it's weird to communicate it to everyone. And I think that, it's been an unfolding process. I'm still really early in. I just had my first chemo treatment 2 weeks ago. So I am brand spanking new to this. So it's all unfolding in real time. It was really rough to talk to people about it in the beginning because there's so many weeks and so many stages in the beginning where you're just gathering information about it. You get the big C word. I was talking to my doctor and I didn't even think about it. My life was completely normal. And then she goes, yeah, we got the results back from the biopsy. It's cancer. And I was like, wait, what do you mean? What do you mean it's cancer? What do you mean? I just couldn't believe it. And then you don't have any other information for a while. You just know it's the C word. You're dying. And you don't know how bad it is. If I'm dying, what I can do about it, anything, how it came about. And so, having to tell people that without any of those follow-up answers, it was just excruciating. I chose to not tell that many people until I got more tests. And that was really hard too, because I was just kind of traumatized and kind of in shock. And then had to go about my life normally. I had my in-laws here and I didn't tell them when I was going to get biopsies because I didn't want to, so it was just a real exercise in having to tolerate uncertainty for myself and then having to manage that for other people.
Yeah, that's horrific. Truly. Yeah. So your in-laws were there and you couldn't tell them you had cancer and you were just going to appointments?
They were there when I was going to get tests for it. And
Okay.
I think they had left by the time that I found out. But yeah, I couldn't tell you. There was a lot of people I just couldn't tell. And it was just really confusing for everyone else why I was acting weird. And those first few days when I just found out I had cancer, I just remember Alex and I just like crying, just like the first things that I would think about was how amazing my son is and how he's learning all these cool things, and how I just want to be able to see him grow up. Like that's the only thing I wanted. That's the only thing that like sharply came into like sharp relief and sharp focus in my mind was, oh my God, like I might not be able to see this kid grow up. And just, that was like week 1 and 2 of this.
I would have to think that there are so many horrible stages of this, but the first 2 weeks must be a unique hell with no answers and your mind just going to the worst possible places.
Yeah. I was just, because my dad died of cancer.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, he died within 3 years, and then he had a different kind of obviously he had a different kind of cancer, but that was what I knew. And so I was like, how can I leave this earth without having my second child, without without seeing him grow up? It was just sitting with that was just absolutely terrifying. And every test, like, I was just waiting for the next PET scan, MRI, whatever, that was going to give just another piece of the puzzle. At the same time, talking to doctors who were very calming and confident, but also confusing, right? Because they're just like, oh, breast cancer. We know how to treat this. You'll be fine. It'll be like a blip. We'll just give you the treatment that we know works, and it'll work. And I was like, oh, It's just so easy, I guess.
Yeah.
But the more information you get, the more complicated that story actually is. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the information you had at the point when you told me was it was growing aggressively.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much it. And I know my mind went to dark, pessimistic places, so yours must have.
Yeah.
And it did. Yeah. Do you want to talk about your prognosis?
Yeah, so I have what's called, I found out, it's called triple positive breast cancer, which means it just basically has estrogen, progesterone, and this protein called HER2 receptors, meaning that luckily I was really fortunate that this is the kind of breast cancer that is fairly easy to treat. And when I say that, I was like, phew, great, I'm going to live. But then, it could be treated. But then learning about the treatment, I was like, oh my God, this is such an ordeal. It's like a minimum 6 rounds of chemo, surgery, maybe radiation, and a year of infusions, and then up to 5 to 10 years of other kind of meds. So yeah, I'm probably gonna live, but it's gonna be a hard life for the next foreseeable future. So yeah, that's my prognosis.
It's so much to accept in such a short period of time. Like it's almost like it's not something that's unfolding very much. I mean, it is and it isn't, but it's like it's just such a pile of bricks. How do you do that?
I don't know. I feel like I just got my grounding after getting remarried and having a baby and just kind of, moving, just kind of getting my footing with all that. And then cancer really changes everything. Like it really is your brush with mortality. And I thought I had a brush with mortality watching, loved ones die. But when you're faced with like, I might die soon, it's just, it's a hard thing to swallow. There's a lot of grief and anger. I went into proactive mode of trying to like read everything online, which is the stupidest thing, and ask everyone questions.
How can you not, though?
Yeah, I mean, trying to understand what's happening. And there's just so many things that it impacts immediately. Like, I had to accept in rapid succession that I'll never breastfeed again. And then I was like, oh, wait, this is going to, maybe I'll lose my breast entirely. And then it's going to wipe out my fertility with the chemo. So I won't be able to bear a child, probably, ever again. Luckily, I have eggs frozen, fingers crossed. Also, who knows how much that contributed to the problem, but we won't go there. But, I mean, it was just like, within 1 week, my view of my family future, right, completely changed. My view of, like, me being a young 38-year-old woman with her body back and being able to be active and sexual and, you know, like a new mom or whatever, it's like, that's all changed, you know. Suddenly your identity changes to like a sick patient, which is actually really funny. A bunch of years ago when I was in college, I was assistant on a research study on interpersonal psychotherapy for breast cancer before I knew anything about any psychology. And I remember listening to all these tapes of sessions. And I remember the biggest thing that these women were dealing with was the change in role and identity. They were like strong, they worked, they were a mom, they were like, you know, confident in many ways. And then suddenly they have to be sick and accept help and not work and not take care of their child. And it's like in an instant, everything changes.
Yeah. And you're someone whose identity is really wrapped up in productivity too. And you've had these two major blows to that. I mean, having a kid, which is a good blow, but still not everything about having a kid is positive, right?
Yeah.
Or easy to accept. And then this. So, yeah. What is this new, how are you able to manage that?
I'm not. I have no idea. I mean, I think also the uncertainty is really weighing on us. And I'm saying us, including, you know, my whole family. It's like, we don't know how each chemo cycle is going to go. Like, I didn't know how badly sick I was going to get as I did. I don't know what the next cycles are like. I don't know what my surgery is going to be like, right? Like, it's so much an unpredictability that really takes away from me being able to be like as productive and predictable and someone who shows up as I want to be. So it's terrifying to me, frankly. Like, I got pretty depressed at spells of this and anxious, trying to lean into acceptance, but it is a work in progress. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I asked, how do you manage that? But the assumption isn't actually that anybody manages any of this. You can live through it and the time can pass, but that doesn't mean you know how to manage it or you're even managing it. It's just living through it. Okay, so
I would say it's something that I'm having to learn. I'm really facing my nightmare, which is like being actually completely incapable sometimes. Like, if I'm sitting in the chemo chair, if I'm knocked out during my really, you know, down days, my sick days after the infusions, I'm like completely incapable. I am in bed. I can't do anything. I haven't actually had a lot of that in my life. But the way I have to manage it is actually do what we always say in this podcast, is like asking for help, accepting help, learning how to slow down and not take on more and take care of myself. Being open and honest with people about what I need is, and I am so fortunate that I have like a really good social, like really good network. My co-founders, I'm the most sad about about many things, but you know, my startup, that like, this is like a new baby that we're trying to launch, and like this is like the kind of the worst time for me to be knocked out. But yeah, my co-founders have been really supportive. Everyone's been really supportive, and that's brought so much guilt and shame on me, but I don't have a choice. I don't have. Usually I overcompensate by like then doing more in another way, but I literally can't. So
yeah, I mean, it's not that it's a silver lining, but hopefully, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe some growth from this will be able to, allow in others in a new way.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that you're feeling guilt and shame about this. On top, I mean, I get why, but it's so not. It's so not something you need to feel guilt and shame about.
Yeah. I think maybe I feel more sorry for the burden that it places on other people. Like, I know it's not my fault. I know it, but I feel bad. Like, I just feel bad that other people have to pick up my slack.
And the way you put it makes me want to pick at it. It's not your slack. You all have a common enemy, right? And that enemy happens to be attacking you.
Yeah.
It's not your slack. It's just that's where the enemy is directed.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
But I understand how we're programmed to think that way, and so that's how it feels. So just a kind of a quick question for my edification. So you have 6 rounds of chemo.
Yeah.
Is one round like one time that you go in for that infusion? Like, have you already done one round?
Yeah, my particular type, the idea is to do chemo first, and then to try to shrink the cancer and then do surgery. And each round is I sit in a chair, hooked up and getting a bunch of IV drugs, a couple of chemotherapies, drugs, and a couple of other ones. And what sucks is the first time I did it, I actually had apparently like a allergic reaction to one of them, and the emergency team had to run in. So there was some nightmare involved in that too. But so you get the infusion, and then a couple days after, you're really like flat. You're really suffering from a lot of the side effects, and it's like your whole body shuts down. It's like my fingernails are going to fall off.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I have to put them in ice to try to prevent them from falling off. But literally everything in my body is being, affected by this. Yeah. I'm going to lose a lot of my hair probably. I'm tired, So there's going to be like a couple days where I'm just flat, and then you build yourself back up, and you feel a little bit better around this week, and then you go back in and get knocked out again. So it is, and so that's a cycle. One infusion is like a 3-week cycle, so I have 6 of those. 5 left.
So one down. Okay. Do you want to talk about how you feel in any more detail, or do you feel like that's kind of, you're good on that?
I mean, I don't know how relevant this is to the rest of what we're talking about, but it is actually relevant to my mental health. When I had my first infusion 2 weeks ago, I also caught a virus. And also, they gave me this medicine that's supposed to boost my immunity, which causes a ton of pain in my body. And so I had those 3 things: chemo, this immunity booster, drug that did nothing, and then the virus that I got. So for like 3 days, I was in unrelenting pain, like an incredible amount of pain, to the point where I actually didn't know if I was going to survive the night. Like, I actually said I love you to Alex, because I was like, this is probably going to be the last thing I say to him, because my mind couldn't comprehend how all I could see, my whole existence, my whole consciousness was extreme pain. Yeah. And I would just lie there for hours in bed, not being able to sleep because it was so painful, and not knowing not knowing how a human can survive this. Like, I was like, something's wrong. This is I'm clearly dying. Like, I'm dying right now. And I'm being actually literally surprised when I woke up the next day. And that was interesting, to really look suffering that deeply in the face and go, wow, human suffering can go to lengths that I did not know existed. And then the next day you're back or whatever in reality. And it's like, I feel like I've been to hell. Like all the stories of like what it was going on in my mind actually as I was all like Sisyphus, like, pushing up that boulder, like just like unending pain with no relief was what I was feeling for 3 days solid. And I don't even know. I don't think I've had time to like process what that was like, but it just, yeah, it was like a weird dream to go see hell and see what that's like, and then come back and like go get cold brew the next day. Right? It's just, I don't know what to say about it.
Sounds like it's not good.
It's not good.
Not a place you want to see.
No.
Yeah, I mean,
I still have a cough.
Well, it's kind of amazing. I mean, just thinking about how little contact I have, for instance, with mortality or with pain, or with suffering. We read these stories about suffering, and I mean, for whatever reason, my mind went to prisoners of war and the unbelievable suffering they go through, and how that's just something that's imagined, and you might even form beliefs about yourself, like I could withstand that.
I would do this in that scenario. Yeah.
I don't form those beliefs because I am 100% confident I could not withstand. But to suddenly be in it and to really think that that you're going to die, I mean, that's just kind of unbelievable that's where you've been the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, people texting like, how are you feeling? I'm like, I literally can't text. And also very bad. Very, very bad. Yeah, I went to dark places where you just, like, I had this thought during those days, and I felt really sad about it, where if someone were to, in the really painful moments, if someone were to, like, kneel down next to me and say, hey, Kibby, you could keep going with this, or you can die right now. I don't know what I'd choose. Yeah. And it really changed. That really made me see something where there's so many people who are suicidal, who suffer, who are in chronic pain, or who have an addiction, or suffer from something, or even go through an illness and aren't able to do the next round of chemo because it's so tough. And they choose to die, or I don't know if it's a choice, but it's like, sometimes it is. If your whole existence is suffering, and there's literally just one door that someone's opening, it takes like an incredible amount of willpower to call up any pictures of your children's faces, or like sense of purpose, or anything that would make you ride out that time, that to give you hope for that suffering to end. Because all you know is the suffering is there. And maybe, like, let's say hypothetically that, that escape is there, but you don't know if you'll ever get to good again. That's a hard place to be. And it gave me a lot more compassion for people who suffer, in different ways like that. Yeah.
I mean, if you think of it, like, I'd rather fade into nothingness than go to hell, right? So if you're in hell, why wouldn't you want to end it? I think that, the healthy people look at it and they're like, but it's temporary, just withstand it. Right. But if your whole existence is hell and pain and suffering, it's like, there's no sense of time anymore.
Yeah.
I would think.
And like, it really gives me a perspective on what we do in mental health and what we treat, because if your whole existence is anxiety or depression or something else, you can't see the edges around it, right? Your whole existence is suffering. And so you're just like, this will never end. And as a therapist, or like as other people who have gone through it, you could be like, no, there's a life outside of it. You just hold on. This is temporary, right? But if like you haven't experienced that, or you don't believe it in that moment, it's really hard to buy, because it's like hurting your knee and being able to see around the knee, right? But if your whole thing is suffering, then I could see the hopelessness. And I see that therapy wants to create space around it. You could be depressed, but you also are like, you build skills to be able to hold on to other good things, or the knowledge that it's temporary, or what you can do to change it, right? So like, it does open up more of those doors, right?
Yeah. I know it's interesting as a therapist because we can see that if they just pivot, a whole nother life could be open to them, you know, and there's no visible pain. And so it's so easy to just like, just get out of bed.
Yeah.
Just get out of bed. Or to the cancer patient, just wait a little while, just withstand. And it'll all be, you know, it'll all be over. But if they've never had the experience of pivoting, and if you've reached a new level of pain that you didn't know was possible, then I would think it'd just be very hard to conceptualize that and to grapple with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then meanwhile, like, we're all like, just withstand, just pivot, because we don't want to be in that feeling either. Like,
yeah.
You know, we want to see the edges around it.
Yeah. And you can from an outside perspective, right? Like,
yeah.
People are like, you're going to be fine. You'll get through this. And, you know, I'm like, I don't think so. Like, you know. But yeah, it's all about perspective. It's all about, Whew.
How has your marriage been through this?
It really, my first reaction was, I feel so bad. I feel so bad that I think it's just more grief. It's more grief that we were in such a nice place. Like, our son's at a really great age. We're settling into a groove. We were just getting into a really nice, stable place. And Alex and I really never got to date. We like dove right into all the things. And I was like, oh, we get to do more stuff together. We're going to go on dates and like, you know, hang out. And now it's like, now our roles have to shift again to sick spouse and caregiver. He's a caregiver now. You know, he's not my husband, he's a caregiver.
Yeah.
And so, all in all, I think we've gotten closer. I think I'm surprised every day about how loving and devoted he is as a partner. You know, it's made me, this was my worst nightmare. Like, growing up with my dad dying, I always thought to myself, geez, I really need to find a good partner who can take care of me if I'm sick. Because I've watched my stepmother take such good care of my dad during his final days and how hard that was. It's not like you're like taking a moist towel and dabbing their forehead while they're, you know, in bed. It's like, it's tough. It's gross. It's painful. It's selfless. It's frustrating, right? It's all those things. So I was like, okay, I got to find a good partner. And I'm so grateful that I did. But it's not easy. I think it's like one of the, you know, it's like, what is he going to do about work? What am I going to do about work? Like, you know, sex life, you know, I mean, we're still learning how to do this. Right. And I think that the thing that scares me, is that it's a long road. It's not a couple week thing where they're a caregiver. It's like a better part of a year more, where my sexuality, you know, like sex is going to be like a question mark. I don't even know. I mean, definitely affected by the hormone therapy that I'll be on. I'm going to go into menopause, so that's exciting and terrible. What is that going to do as a 38-year-old wife? Yeah, and then it just shifts the dynamic, right? Instead of, you know, like what I'm worried about is that his concerns and problems and feelings will be minimized. Because I have the cancer, right? Like it just changes the table a little bit, right? We won't get to do as much fun stuff, right? And he'll have to take on a lot more of the responsibility. I'm saying all this, but I'm like, you know, Alex is champing up. He's really doing so much of the work and the help, and he's insisting on coming to all the appointments and trying to make accommodations. Like, he's doing all the things. Yeah. I can't help but feel bad about that and having him kind of shortcut his life for that. But I think that we're becoming more clear that our relationship and our family is top priority. You know, like just reconnecting to how much that's important in life, right? Like, if I were to die, right? Like, that's not as important as whatever job thing we got going on, right?
Wait, no, that is more important than whatever job thing you have going on.
Oh, yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah, that's
Cut
kidding.
that.
If I could think of... Don't cut that.
Well, don't
if I
cut
could think
that. I
of
guess it's a
any
Freudian slip.
that what I would attribute to Kibby, it's saying that if she were to die, it's not as important as whatever job thing she's got going on.
I stand by it. I believe it. Core beliefs deep down.
Yeah. Can I just tell the listeners what you told me while we were breaking for a second?
Sure.
My audio went out, so we had to break, and Kibby said, "I worry I'm being a bummer." On an episode about cancer.
All the people listening. Let's make this an uplifting.
where she's the one who has cancer. She's being a bummer.
I'm sorry, everyone.
Sorry. So, we're just going to collectively squash that worry, okay? Yeah, I mean, God, it's weird because it's like there's a temptation to find the silver linings, and like they're there, but they're like linings. I mean, but I guess coming out of this with a really strong sense of intention about your family and what the real priorities are, and I know you, like every couple, has had squabbles about things that maybe don't feel nearly as important now.
Yeah.
Like where to live
I always said to him, I was like, one of our bigger issues was like our choice to live in New York versus California. And I always said, like, we don't know what's going to happen. Like, we don't know where we're going to live. And I always said, like, jokingly, I was like, I might die. Like, I might get cancer and die. And, like, you never know what's going to happen, right? It's like, to worry about the future seems so silly now, because now I'm like, if I were to die in like a couple whatever, I would want to spend it with my family and friends. Like, that's it. Like, who cares, what productivity thing, like, it feels good when I do work, but like what I really where my heart is the people in my life. So a lot more clear.
Well, you really won the location debate then.
Yeah. I mean, especially now that I have all my support system around me, and I am close enough to Memorial Sloan Kettering, which is one of the world's premier like cancer centers. I don't even know how I got that lucky in the scope of being supremely unlucky. Yeah. Just to put listeners at ease, you are getting some amazing treatment. Yes. Correct? Yeah. Very good treatment. Yeah. And you're doing all the things. All the things. Acupuncture, Reiki, changing your diet, no alcohol. Yeah. All the things. Yeah. Yeah. Not that I'm saying like right, Kibby, like right, no, you're doing those things, but I just know that's what you told me, and so I'm trying everything I can to like take this thing on. So yeah. Yeah. I think you brought up though something really interesting, which is the dynamics of his problems being minimized. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting, in doing some research for this episode. So first I was just kind of struggling to find stuff on Scholar, which is where we ideally like to find articles. I did find some, but first I was just kind of Googling like ways to help your friend with cancer and things to say, and it was giving this, places like Northwestern and cancer.net, and they're saying things like, okay, so like don't say this, say this, do this, don't do this, but above all, treat them like nothing's changed. I was like, what? Huh. Treat them like they don't have cancer. I'm like, that's completely contradictory. So that's not completely possible. You said to me early on, like, I don't want to be treated like a cancer patient. And we can kind of go into what exactly that means and and what's possible within that. But, I was talking to Jason about his wife, and this wasn't a very long conversation. I didn't want to make him, he compartmentalizes a lot because he had to, so I didn't want to like steep him in this for a very long time, but he was kind of like, they
they are going to go from anger to sadness in a millisecond. And you two as a couple are going to go from optimism to pessimism in a second. And, you know, they have crazy hormones and medications and the fucking cancer, like fucking with their mind, basically. These weren't exactly his words, but that there a lot of like mood things might be out of control. And he was just like, I had to be a punching bag and I had to be okay with that. And there's, in a sense, no way around that. I mean, if something so horrific is going on in your life, it's not like you're going to be, you know, butterflies and rainbows all the time. And so he's just like, yeah, I had to have my own really strong support network. And so I think, you know, there was that. And then, of course, he had to raise a kid. I mean, she was so severely sick and wound up dying and wound up choosing when to stop her treatment, right? So a lot of these dynamics happened with her that we've kind of talked about.
How old was their kid when she passed?
6.
Oh, and how long did she suffer from cancer?
1.5 years.
Oof. It's fast.
Yeah, it was fast. I think she was basically stage 4 when they found out.
Oh, God.
Yeah. But I asked him, I was like, you know, she is dealing with her own mortality and with her own sickness, but you're also grieving and terrified too. Is that something you can share with her? He's like, no, I would try not to share that. And I was just thinking of how I can understand why, because it's like, how much does the cancer patient have to comfort their friends? Can they, like, what is that? But at the same time, experiencing such a disconnect in your last, you know, times with somebody, you know, where you're feeling something so intense and they're feeling so intense, but you have to withhold yours because it would be such a burden to the other.
Yeah.
And I imagine she was in part withholding hers.
Yeah. And
just that dynamic is just so sad to me.
Yeah, that's hard. That is hard. I see that already happening a little bit. I mean, I think that we are lucky that we have therapy, we're in therapy, and we are working towards, you know, I noticed that before going into my first chemo treatment, I was really scared, and I was like, I'm really scared, and Alex was like, me too. Yeah, it's good to be able to share in that and connect. I think it's tough though, because like there is some truth to that. You sometimes have to hold back some stuff. For example, like I am sure that Alex has other feelings and thoughts that it would not be that great to share with me, right? Like if he was like, God, this sucks. Like I hate this. Like why do I have to? Why? A 38-year-old man, why do I have to deal with this, right? Like I'm sure that it's gone through. But if you were to say that to me, it would be kind of painful, right? So there totally. Really is a level of having to do a little, you know, filtering, and that is tough.
Yeah. What was it like for you? I mean, I know when you told me, I was already crying, but I then burst further into tears. And I remember being very aware. It's like, I don't want to make Kibby comfort me right now. Oh, no, I'm doing this all wrong. I'm doing this all wrong. Like, I mean, what was your experience telling people? I know you waited to tell your mom, for instance, because I bet she was one of the hardest people to tell.
Yeah.
What was it like? The problem with when you tell the people you love for the first time is they're not prepared, right? And so... Like I knew I couldn't regulate because I was like, oh my God, this is...
Yeah.
So what was that like for you?
Yeah, it's we're a different person. You know, I was surprised by how much my mom and my family in general were, you know, just like supportive, like we're here for you, like we got this, anything you need from me. And then there was other people like my nanny was the first person I told because I just came home from finding out and both of us were crying and she was like, what? And I was like... I told her, you know, so I was like sobbing with that. And with you, there was just like so much wrapped into like trying not to say anything to my friends. And then but also trying to pretend nothing was wrong, but also being like, I really can't deal with anything right now. And I'm angry about this. And I think it sucked to not have anything to comfort people with, right? Like, I was like, I have cancer. And then people be like, are you going to be okay? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know? So I think that it would have been better, or it is better to like, and hard to hold on and wait till you have a package to explain to people, to certain kind of people, to be like, okay, here's what I have. Here's what the plan is. Here are, you know, things that you can do to help, right? That would be the ideal thing to be able to tell people, but...
Yeah, but then you have to wait so long and without support.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how, I mean, thinking about, like, what is helpful for you, how do you, like, because, I mean, I can talk about my experience with, like, uncertainty around that, but what has...
Yeah, tell me about your uncertainty around that. What is that like for a friend?
Well, I mean, I think I'm like, okay, my number one priority is making her feel, if not better, then, like, not worse. And there's just some anxiety about, like, not knowing what to say, not knowing how often to check in, not knowing if you want to talk about how sick you feel. And then just being like, I mean, I think one element is when somebody feels like shit and, like, right, they can't text, normally I would experience distance as like, what if she's mad at me, right? And so, but now there are all these competing hypotheses, like, no, she's sick, she probably can't talk about it. Am I not checking in enough? Should I? But if I had checked in, would that be experienced as, like, intrusive? Like, so just some, like, some anxiety around, like, you know, is this sick, or did I do something wrong, or should I be doing something else? So there's that kind of thing. And then I think, you know, there's part of it where, like, if I were in your position, I don't think I'd want to hear about the great things or the exciting or adventurous things in other people's lives. And so, you know, not knowing whether to share that kind of thing, but also being like, well, I'm also not going to complain about my life or, like, talk about negative things because they're so trivial in comparison.
Right. That's a dynamic change, yeah.
And so that, I think there's that kind of push-pull. And then, you know, not knowing whether to go in with lightness and humor to be like, you know, like, she want laughter in her days, or is that going to be, you know, thought of as, like, inconsiderate or something. And so that's the other thing.
Yeah. I mean, I can't speak for everyone, so I'm not going to. I'm not going to make this like a evidence-based tip of how to speak to your friend. I think asking, you know, if you don't know, right, if your friend or loved one has cancer, like, ask, like, what kind of support, how much checking in, what kind of checking in, what would feel good. I'm here for you. Let me know if there's anything you need. Has been really nice. Like, everyone has pretty much said that. To not say, do not offer your opinions of what caused it or what kind of treatment you should get. That is not welcome and nice. It can feel like a judgment, right? You know, it's if only you had eaten differently. I don't know. I'm just making this up.
No, that it's legit. I mean, my sister's ex-husband had cancer, and his mother, like, one of her first reactions was to send him some article about how he shouldn't have eaten red meat. Yeah,
right. Like, yeah, don't do that. What are they going to do at that point, right? Like, they just feel ashamed, and, you know, anyway. And also, like, you're trying to trust a care team, and your doctors have told you something, and when people chime in with, like, my friend had this essential oil that really, you know, cured the cancer, it's like, no, that just please don't offer that. But for me, I actually, you know, it's funny that you say how weird it is to act like nothing's wrong. There's part of that I do like, where it's like, yeah, I want to hear about the ups and downs. I think I asked you for, like, gossip or, like, something funny.
Oh, I've been mining my world. But the problem is that my life is so boring now.
You gotta create it. You know, that's what you can do to support me, is create some drama for me. Even highs and lows and funny parts of the day, right? Like, I want to hear it, because it's just like, I don't want my whole world to be cancer and everyone to be like, how are you? Are you okay? Which is also nice, but I don't want that to be my only interaction with people, right?
Yeah.
I want to feel like there's a semblance of a normal life outside of this. And I don't want people to hide things because they're afraid that like, oh, it's not as bad as cancer. So, you know, like I do appreciate when people tell me what's going on in their lives or, you know, a big caveat is that, yeah, there are days that I can't respond. And usually I'm pretty good, you know me, like I'm pretty good with texting or responding to things. But like this has been like, I will be literally in a infusion or a test or in a state where I cannot text. And so when I see, for me, when I see text that I can't respond to, there are questions that I can't respond to, I get really anxious. But as long as people know that, you know, I get that free pass. Things that have been really nice though are, I'll give a shout out to my friend Allegra Long, who is a doctor who like use her doctor skill to like talk me through some things and hook me up with the care team I have now. Connecting me to people who also have been through breast cancer. At first I thought that would be weird, but getting to know other people with similar experiences has actually been really relieving. And I've gotten a couple sweet care package. I mean, this is not like a request for them, but just the people genuinely like sending me some like food or my friend put together a care package with like different like creams and blankets and socks and stuff. Like, and I was like, oh, this person did some research about what cancer patients need, and like a cookbook for cancer. Yeah, so just little gestures like that were really sweet. In the although the things that have been really hard is that I don't know what kind of instrumental help to ask from people, because I don't know what I need, right? Like I'm learning how incapacitated I am. I'm also learning how immunocompromised I am. So it's like, sure, I want people to come visit and help. Can I have that? No, I don't know. So I think, I don't think there's like a single answer for what people can like, you know, practically do. But I think just being open to what the person needs is helpful. Yeah.
Well, I'll look over this this paper and share a little bit about some findings. So this paper basically interviewed 14 loved ones of people with cancer, and 7 of them, so they all identified themselves as friends, but 7 of them were also family members. And that's just an important distinction, primarily with caretaking roles. So one thing that I found is that friends are constantly renegotiating their relationship with their sick friend depending on the severity of their disease. So one of the things it talked about was kind of going back and forth between seeing their friend as a friend versus a patient. So
the identity shift.
Yeah. So a friend is somebody that they can talk to normally and kind of do normal things with, but that there's this really sad thing going on, versus somebody that is really more incapacitated, they can't do the same things with. And I think there was this theme of this sort of Damocles. And so I think this is more relevant to patients who are potentially going to die from cancer. But this sense of like, I don't know how much time I have left with this friend, and the unbelievable amount of pressure that puts on their interactions. And they saw that when this pressure was felt, there was a decrease in the kind of creativity and joyfulness of like those interactions. I mean, I think just because pressure can kind of kill that, right?
Of course.
Yeah. So it says that although care was in general voluntary, some friends that were included felt burdened with or forced in providing more care than they were willing to provide. I think that was a dynamic specifically felt by family. So they found that friends don't typically have like caregiving expectations of other friends. They have highest caregiving expectations of partners. So it sounds like kind of discussing, that's also kind of why I wanted to discuss Alex. And then family members, and then friends. And friends actually sometimes felt a more closeness, because when they chose to give care, like it was voluntary, and that we know that giving to others increases feelings of connectivity and positivity and happiness. So that was actually good for the friends. In some cases with family members, it was experienced as burdensome. So some people felt, kind of they had more perspective on their own lives and relationships, and they had that kind of, I think, reprioritization of values and connection with the importance of their lives and gratitude for their lives. So that was a positive. Yeah, so many studies have shown that friendships decrease in frequency when patients are diagnosed with cancer, and this seems to be due with uncertainty and anxiety around how to approach the friend with cancer. Oof. Yeah, I know. I mean, and which is just so sad. It's just so sad, because we know that friends are, within social network, is one of the biggest predictors of health.
Yeah.
Positive health outcomes.
Yeah. I think it's okay for people to say to the person, and maybe even there might be one quarterback for the sick patient, like if there's a partner, right? And then the friends can talk to the partner or to the person and be like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. I'm scared. I love you. I'm here for you. What would you like to do? Right? Like, I think being open about how you're feeling is okay.
Yeah.
As long as you can hold it, as long as you're not looking to that person to reassure you, just be like, I don't know what to do. I don't know the right thing to do, but I am here.
Yeah. I think that could play into the anxieties, like not wanting to seem as if they're looking for reassurance or nurturance or for the other person to fix their problem. But to just say, just be open about it and say, like, this is, in case I seem uncalibrated right now or something, like, this is part of the dynamic. So something that was found is that sometimes cancer patients will become more distant with their friends because they've got this huge thing going on in their lives that is not relatable to other people. Is that something you've felt?
Yeah, I felt that also when I had kids, where it's like there's this huge experience and it's multi-layered and there's all these things going on. And I feel like a kinship with people who have gone through it. Like, I've actually started to connect to some people who had breast cancer before or are going through it now. And it's a really unique experience. It's not all bad. It's just like, the nuances of, like, did you get an IV or port, blah, 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 right? And then my other friends are not going to know what that is. That's why I still want to continue talking about, like, other people's lives and stuff like that, because I don't want to feel that disconnection, even though it's like I'm now, like, just newly initiated in this, like, awful club. I still want to have connection to the outside world. So I hope this doesn't become isolating. Yeah. Although it does definitely cut down on when I can see people and when I can hang out and the things that I can do. I can't really drink and stuff like that. So yeah, I could see how it could limit your life a lot, but I think I prioritize on quality time when I do have it.
Yeah, I mean, so one study showed that sometimes the relationship seems to change when difficult topics were brought up or when physical problems hindered them in doing social activities. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think also people have different levels of closeness or distance with friends. And it does make sense that there would be a little bit of a pairing or a pruning when a lot of times, like, some of the friends you have to have fun with. Mm-hmm. And so if that activity is closed off, then that might be a harder relationship to maintain. And then one thing you had said earlier about a fear about Alex. So it says, friends reported to experience difficulties in how often they wanted to approach their ill friends. We talked about that. They emphasized the ever-present knowledge of cancer inside their friend's body as a time bomb. So that, I think, is more relevant to people who could die. Mm-hmm. They seem to balance between the wish to take care of their ill friend, having a good time, and not knowing what their ill friend desired at specific times. And then talked about, some friends felt burdened where they're forced to provide more care than they could. Although they acknowledged this relationship provides space to reflect about their own lives. So I thought it was going to talk about, like, one of the friends' issues being minimized, like, with the concern with Alex, but I was wrong. So scratch that from the record. But so those were that was a kind of summation about that. And then, so yeah, so friends are constantly negotiating their relationship depending on the severity, transparency of patients about their illness, and then their previous experiences and personal circumstances in life, which makes sense. If, again, like if your primary way of connecting with another person is running around partying, then that's going to be a pretty difficult relationship to maintain. If you have a quieter life based more on connection, talking, getting to know somebody, then that would be easier to maintain. Although a decrease in friendship may impact a patient's quality of life, friends also need to be protected against providing more care than they are willing or able to give. And healthcare professionals can assist in this.
Yeah.
So those are,
I think in general, it's like, as you're saying, it's a big enemy. It's a big like elephant in the room. It's something that directs attention towards, even if you're not talking about it. So if you have a friend who is so used to drawing attention to themselves, or are used to a different dynamic, in some ways it has to become about the cancer, right? Like things have to be reorganized around the cancer when that person is ill or when they're not ill. What do they need? Like, and that could be hard for people to like kind of give the upper hand to the cancer, right? The patient and the friends. But I'll give an example of what not to do, because you say healthcare professionals are really important, and also like what can loved ones do with their own feelings? And we always say on this podcast for caregivers or loved ones to get your own care, right? To get your own therapy, to take care of yourself, to get support around this situation, even though you're not the quote, quote, one who's sick.
Yeah.
I do have a really close friend, I'll call her Sarah, who had breast cancer when she was in her early 30s. And I mean, the story itself is crazy, but her husband ended up leaving her after she recovered from cancer in this really terrible, terrible way. I have so much hatred in my heart for this man. But the way she described it was that when they were a young, newly married couple, he was probably, I'll say, still trying to find himself and trying to find his identity and all
was he like things. Around the age of 35 to 38? That's often when men are still adolescents.
Yeah, exactly. As an adolescent, adolescent 30-year-old man, this 30-something-year-old man. And I think she says that at first he did the right thing by being like, we got this. I'm a knight in shining armor. I got, I'll be in this with you. Very like hero about it. But kind of neglected his own feelings and his own care, didn't go to therapy, didn't seek the help that he needed. And midway through, you just don't realize how long this cancer is, this treatment is, and how much of a burden it places on a marriage. And he just started cracking, he just started to like crumble. And she said that, this is just truly unbelievable. During one of her chemo infusions, he started to get, he was like, broke down to tears and was saying like, what if I can't do this anymore? What if I leave you? And what if no one ever loves me anymore because I left my wife with cancer? Yeah. She had to comfort him.
She's not the recipient for that. Wow.
During that, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because that is just unbelievable. I mean, human, understandable in many ways, but I'm just baffled just because, and I'm sure, that must have been a moment of weakness, so I can't really judge someone for that. But I imagine in her position, I would just be so scared that your main support system is like thinking about what would happen to him if he left you. Like, what would you do? You're just trying to pick up the pieces because you're just trying to get your caregiver to stay, right? Or even just to feel loved or not to feel a burden on the person you love, right? It's just...
Man, it is hard to imagine a worse moment in someone's life than receiving that comment, getting a chemo. Yeah.
Yeah. awful. And, apparently it kind of fell apart after that, and a lot of resentment and feelings were like kind of coming at her, and openly expressing the impatience with the process and stuff. And as there is a fine line about sharing how you're feeling, which is like, of course, every caregiver is going to feel some resentment or impatience or exhaustion. But also to make the person feel bad about it, maybe not intentionally, but like if the person already feels like a burden, to hear that, yes, you are burdensome, this situation is burdensome, would just be crushing. Just be absolutely crushing.
Fucked up dynamic.
I know.
It's like, I understand him having that internal dialogue. And the weird thing about it is that it's like he felt so connected to her and trusting with her that he was able to voice that to her.
That's a good point.
And like, it's the most crushing thing I can think of somebody ever saying. I mean, besides your child is dead, Yeah,
I imagine really judgmentally that kind of behavior
Really
would make sense. would make sense for partners who are used to being the one being taken care of, and then it's just like, no, I can do this. I could rise to the occasion and be the one caring, and they probably can, but it's not a black and white 2D identity to put on. It takes stamina. It takes taking care of yourself. Like, he could have those thoughts and feelings. Go to a support group with other caregivers. Go to a therapist. Express those there, and then come back and, literally pick up their hair when they're going through the fusions, right? So it's just, anyway. And then the divorce was just just unbelievable. So that is a shout out to my friend who is amazing, and she really is so inspiring to me, because I've seen her actually like blossom and grow from breast cancer. I mean, it's the most horrible thing that happened to her, but she is like a new person now. She's still the same, like what she. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to speak entirely for her, but what I see is that she just has this confidence. She used to be like, she's always very smart and kind and likable and can do anything, but she always like carried this self-doubt and neuroticism about it, like always like kind of insecure and like smiling to show up and be the good girl. But afterwards, like, she doesn't give a fuck. She like wears what she wants. She has this cool short haircut. She laughs loudly in ways that I've never seen her before. She like is remarried to a wonderful, wonderful man who's supportive and, is really like fully there with her through a lot of the treatment. And she's embracing parts of herself that I saw her kind of like hide more from like public view, I guess. And she just, I think she said that she doesn't, in so many words, doesn't sweat the small stuff as much, and is able to like confront the uncertainty of your health and body and existence, that you just have no control. And then when you really lean into the acceptance of no control, cool things can happen.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I can't, no, I mean, I feel weird about imagining my way into this, but I feel like if you have to confront your mortality and this pain, that's such an alone feeling, but also could potentially be almost like a connection to yourself and a fade away of the other voices. Yeah. That could be empowering, potentially. Yeah. So does her story give you hope? Do you see seeds of that in you? It does, yeah. It does. It's a long journey from where I am to where she is now. Like, it's like 5-year journey. But I can see that, I could see even like in the depression and anxiety, what is important to me. My family, my friends, my relationships. And in terms of work, wanting to contribute to having people, like helping people build stronger relationships, whether it's through like my startup or therapy or this podcast or anything, like that is all very, very clear now. And a lot of other stuff that I would have worried about
are still there, but they're dimming a little bit. And I'm hopeful that I will have a growth in a different way. I just don't know exactly what that is yet, but I do have hope that I can make some kind of meaning and growth out of this.
Yeah. You just have to walk through hell first.
Yeah, just walk through the fire to get out.
I mean,
it's no big deal.
It's right on the other side, of hell. So
just get infusions of poison every few weeks. It's totally fine.
Yeah. Okay, well, that guy sucks, but I am kind of glad he fucked off, because it sounds like she's found a winner. And
her life. Yeah. I mean, it didn't come without a sacrifice, but she's killing it. So.
Yeah. It just does make me feel like so appreciative that I have the partner I have, and that you have the partner you have, and so scared sometimes for my friends who don't have those partners.
Yeah. Here are rapid fire tips. 1, when you date someone, think, will this person take care of me if I have cancer?
Yeah.
And will I take care of this person if they have cancer? So that's a good deciding criterion. Another weird tip is really respect community health. This is a weird thing that I didn't think I would say, but like all the COVID masks and all the don't do antibiotics if you're healthy and don't need them because you make super bugs that are dangerous to the elderly, immunocompromised. Like, actually, that used to be abstract rules to follow, but now I am that person. I am that person that if you have COVID and go out to a bar, I could die, right? Like, if you make, if I catch a virus that's like a super bug, it is life-threatening. So it's like, it's no longer abstract. Like, we are all kind of in this together, and try to do what you can to respect the people around you. And then just be loving and be honest and give me really good gossip. Please.
I'm trying. I'm like, where is it?
Make it. You can make it.
Yeah, sometimes I'm like, what if I just made something up?
No, go on and do stuff. Go on and cause some trouble. Jeez.
It's taken me a long time to get to this boring and secure place in my life. I could just rip it all up, though, set it all on fire.
There will be one podcast episode in the future dedicated to whatever crazy thing you're going to do to make me feel better about my cancer. Okay, great. Signing off.
So, any resources?
Yeah. If look into support groups in general, and different hospitals will have different support groups. So I think that's a major thing for patients and loved ones. And there's a book that is on my list, my reading list, that I will get to. I heard it's really good. But I'll say it here, Getting Things Off My Chest, A Survivor's Guide to Staying Fearless and Fabulous in the Face of Breast Cancer by Melanie Young.
Yeah, okay. And then I think for loved ones, the main, I think, conclusion from the past 20 minutes of this podcast is get your own support network too, and make sure that you have somebody to say the things that are in your head to, instead of your wife with cancer. So I think that's just a note to take your feelings seriously as well, because that's a way of caring for your friend too.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay, well, we will see you all in a couple of weeks. I don't know if our episodes might be a little bit spottier just through this period of chemo. We'll try to keep consistent, but we're keeping them every other week.
We'll try.
Consistent. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, thank you so much for opening up. I know this was a big deal to talk about this publicly, and I'm really glad that you were able to and were so honest, and I'm really glad that people get to hear your perspective.
Thank you.
So, yeah. Okay, so on that note, if you all want Kibby to get better from cancer, what you can do is give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And if you don't, well...
Bye! That's good.
By accessing this podcast, I acknowledge that the hosts of this podcast make no warranty, guarantee, or representation as to the accuracy or sufficiency of the information featured in this podcast. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. This podcast and any and all content or services available on or through this podcast are provided for general, non-commercial informational purposes only and do not constitute the practice of medical or any other professional judgment, advice, diagnosis, or treatment, and should not be considered or used as a substitute for the independent professional judgment, advice, diagnosis, or treatment of a duly licensed and qualified healthcare provider. In case of a medical emergency, you should immediately call 911. The hosts do not endorse, approve, recommend, or certify any information, product, process, service, or organization presented or mentioned in this podcast, and information from this podcast should not be referenced in any way to imply such approval